Welcome to Encounter, where we celebrate putting faith into action and community leaders who live out compassion, grace, and love. We're a program of the Broome County Council of Churches that addresses food insecurity through CHOW and the Greater Good Grocery, provides hospital and jail ministry, builds wheelchair ramps, and assists neighbors with transportation and shopping services through Faith in Action volunteers. We invite you to the conversation. Encounter your neighbors as we learn to walk together in love and kindness.
Good morning and welcome to Encounter. I'm your host today, Joe Sellepack. I'm the Executive Director at the Broome County Council of Churches. We have many partner organizations inside of the community that help create a network of care for our community. And one of those partners is Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity is a pretty old organization where we'll talk a little bit about who Habitat is and what they do and how the organization works. But first, we're going to talk to Lateisha Judge Ulrich. She is the Executive Director at Broome County Habitat for Humanity. Welcome to Encounter today, Lateisha.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about you. You're new to the role of Executive Director. Is that correct?
Yes, new-ish. I was told by some of my fellow executive directors I'm no longer allowed to call myself new because I've been here for a year, but I still ride the new wave.
Yeah, you can ride that as long as they'll let you.
Exactly.
Exactly. So, what brought you to Habitat for Humanity, and what excited you about the prospect of being executive director there?
Well, I've always had a passion for nonprofit work. I always tell people that it takes a special type of person to do nonprofit because it's really laborious and it's thankless, but it's also really important. And if we don't do it, who will? So I was previously at home with my son. I took some time out of the workforce after I had my son, and I was homeschooling him and just home enjoying him, watching him grow up. And then he started school in the public schools, and he basically, in not so many words, told me he didn't need me anymore.
That's a very humbling time.
Yes. So after I stopped crying, I said, you know what, well, let me get a part-time position just to keep myself busy and active in the meantime. So I went and I was looking for jobs. I saw Habitat for Humanity was hiring at the time for a community outreach coordinator.
Yeah.
So I called in and I said, you still want someone? And at the time, the executive director was like, yes, come on in. And she interviewed me that day. And so I basically started a week after, but it was part-time. I was there about 3 days a week. I was doing mostly fundraising, coordinating things with our volunteers, coordinating things with our campus volunteers. And at the time, we were right in the thick of prepping for our biggest fundraiser, so that took up a great deal of time. And then at the end of the year, the executive director resigned, and everyone kind of looked at me and were like, you interested? And I was rather quite scared. I won't say I completely jumped at it, but I figured, let me try it out, see if it's something I feel like I could do. I really do love the organization. I love our mission, so I figured let me take a stab at it, and over a year later, here I am.
Well, this is it's interesting how our journeys lead us to these places, right? So, what is it about your history and where you've come from that led you to really want to be involved in nonprofit work?
So I am originally from the Broome County, from Endicott, Tiger for Life.
Tiger for Life.
UE. Yes, I'm originally from here, and ever since I was a child, I always wanted to help. My mother instilled that in me. My grandmother, she was a teacher, and she had started 2 choirs in our area. She also ran our music department at the church, and so she was very active in the community, and so she spilled that to my mom spilled it to me, and so originally I said, you know what, I want to be a public defender because I thought that was going to be the best way I could help. And I don't know if anyone else knows this feeling, but once you tell your parent that you want to be like a doctor or a lawyer, they're like, yeah, go with that.
Yeah.
Up until that point, I said, I want to be like a model, and she's like, no. But when I said I want to be a lawyer, she was like, okay, yeah, you do. So I stayed the course. I ended up going to UAlbany in SUNY. I did an accelerated program, 3 years undergrad, 3 years law school, and I graduated. And I really thought I was going to just dive into public practice, but in doing that in law school and then subsequently afterwards, it was just not the experience I wanted. It felt kind of overwhelming at times because the system is so broken, and so it was really difficult for me day in and day out, and I just felt like I wasn't effectuating the change I really wanted to see.
So did you practice as a lawyer?
I did for a short stint, and then I switched to trust and estate law, which I did enjoy, and I still do enjoy. But what happened was I ended up getting pregnant with my son, and my husband and I kind of sat and had a discussion, and we both went back and forth, but I really felt strongly about staying home with Eli, so I took myself out of the workforce, and then 7 years later put myself back in. So when I found Habitat, I'm familiar with the organization, it's an international brand, and I thought that sounds like something really interesting. I will be honest, I did not know that Broome County had a local one.
Right.
All my life, even growing up here, never had heard of it, but when I did end up, getting into the organization, I did learn that we've been around for a while, since 1992, and we've built a number of homes. So I just thought it would be a really good opportunity to try and actually be able to do something where I'm helping people and it doesn't feel so roundabout with crime and a lot of headache.
Yeah.
So that's how I started.
But you're still working in the justice field. It's like, do you view the right to a house as something that you might consider to be a just something that people deserve? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, people will say owning a home is a privilege, and I say no, owning a home, having a safe place to live is a right. It's a fundamental right. So I'm very passionate about that. And I won't lie, home ownership isn't necessarily for everyone. Some people simply don't want the responsibility that comes with home ownership, but at the same time, I believe that everyone deserves a safe and affordable place to live, no matter how you do it, whether it's a safe and affordable apartment or a safe and affordable home.
And how does Habitat work with people in order to get them to that place?
So we are all volunteer run except myself, and I have one other woman with me in the office. And so our volunteers, they construct all of our homes, and they are awesome. And they build the homes basically from the ground up. We have done a few rehabs in the past, but by and large, we build from the ground up. And then when we're at a certain point in the build, when the foundation, I guess, is done, like all of the really preliminary stuff, foundation framing, we start accepting applications for people who want to be homeowners. And once you apply, you go through our process with our family selection committee. We make sure that you're mortgage ready, because you do have to be pre-qualified for a mortgage, and we make sure that you're mortgage ready. And we do work with you. Some people come in and they don't necessarily have the credit score that we prefer, but not because they have poor credit. It's just they don't have established credit lines in the traditional sense. So we work with them to try and establish a higher credit score for better credit lines and alternative credit lines. And so after you're selected, the committee votes, and if you are selected to participate, you then join the crew. And you have to put in what we call sweat equity.
Yeah.
Yep. And you actually partake in the building of your home. And so I'm currently talking with our latest homeowner, and she even said to me just the other day that she feels as though she's grown attached to the house because she's seen all the work that she's done, but she's also been interacting with our volunteers. And to quote her, she said, "It's a humbling experience."
It is.
To see, so many people, strangers, banding together to build a house that she and her family are going to live in. So that's great.
Now, you may not, you probably, you don't know this, but when I was in seminary, so this is a long time ago, probably longer than you've been alive. I'm almost positive of it. I was the treasurer for my Habitat for Humanity chapter at Asbury Seminary, and I was a volunteer working on some of those houses. What I did in order to get through seminary was I was a roofer. So
Okay.
so I would carry shingles. I could carry 2 barrels of shingles up and down a ladder without a problem and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I did was I would help the crew get all organized and work on putting on the roof and that kind of thing. And one of the interesting things about that whole process was that I got to meet one of the people who was involved with building the house, who is going to be from the owner's family. So the owner was working downstairs, but the grandmother was working on the roof with me.
Love
and she was hammering away, and I was throwing shingles down, and she was putting them on and all that kind of stuff. And what was really interesting about it was that we were being interviewed by the media that had come, and they were asking why are you doing this and all that kind of stuff. And she was saying, it's important to me to have my daughter own a home. But then the media then asked, well, how about all these volunteers? And she says, well, I got to see all the nails going in, and I know that they're going in right, and the house is being built right, and all the rest of that kind of thing was going on. And I know how, and I got to meet the designers and all the rest of it, to be involved in the entire process. And you're right. I mean, it gives them a real connection to that house, right?
Yes.
So it's almost like they've put blood into that, right?
Literally.
Sometimes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you back up and you say, well, their volunteers are working on it, but when they've had like hurricanes or disasters, natural disasters that have gone through a specific area, a lot of the places that are made by prefabbed houses or any number of other things, they have more problems with those after the disaster than with the Habitat house where volunteers made it. Mm-hmm. Because those volunteers are really anxious at trying to make sure that they do everything correct, right?
Yes.
So those houses are really well built.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, my guys, plus I have a few women. I have mostly one woman who's like dedicated on the crew, a few other go in and out. I'm always looking for more women to join the crew. But my crew, they are such amazing workers. They're so dedicated. They're so knowledgeable. Not everyone has to know everything. And one of the things that a lot of people ask me when they're looking to volunteer is, well, I don't have my own tools, or I don't know how to do electricity, or I don't know how to run a power tool. And I'm like, well, here's a chance to learn. My volunteers will teach you. If you're interested in learning how to run wire, I've got a guy. He'll show you. I mean, you'll work, but
you will.
He'll show you. If you're interested in learning how to do plumbing, I've got a guy. So, they're not just doers, they're teachers as well. And they stand by their work, they stand on their work. They're very critical of making sure everything is followed up to code. We check, double check, and triple check, because they do understand what this home means to the family. And we don't want to just turn over something that was ramshackle or halfway done. So yeah, our volunteers, they may be volunteers, but don't discount them. They do amazing work.
They do. My guest today is Lateisha Judge Ulrich, and we have been talking about Habitat for Humanity in Broome County and the work that they do there, as well as her being a newish, let's say that, a newish executive director in the area. So Lateisha, right now, are you accepting applications?
I am. We have a house available. So right now, if you are interested, usually I would send people to our website, broomehabitat.org. We have a screening application that you can quickly fill out. But right now, I would say because we're looking to find a partner family quickly, call our office. The number is 607-239-4783 and ask to speak to Michelle. I'm always around, so you can certainly ask to speak to me, but Michelle does our family service and she's got it down to a science. And so I usually say, here you go, because otherwise I'll stutter and sputter through. But yes, if you're interested, by all means, call the office and have a conversation with Michelle.
So you said that there were some pre-screening parts of that application. What are some of the criteria that you're looking for in an applicant?
So for every applicant, what we're looking for is someone who is mortgage ready. A common misconception and myth that we are finding we need to dispel, not just locally but internationally, is that Habitat builds homes for free, or we build our homes and give them away, or we build our homes and there's some kind of lottery. I can't tell you how many people have called and asked how they can get into the lottery to win a house. And we don't win the house. I mean, that would be fun. I would love to have that much inventory where we could just pull names out of a hat. But no, so you do have to be mortgage ready. So a lot of people, they have this belief that, well, I'm paying X number of dollars for rent monthly. I could then just take that and put it toward a mortgage and actually have something I own and have equity in my house. Smart and admirable, but a lot of times people overlook the other components of home ownership. It's not just, your mortgage payment translating from a rent payment. You have taxes, you have homeowners insurance, you have additional utilities, you have maintenance and upkeep. So that's one of the things when people do apply, we do work with them and we explain, like, these are the things that go along with home ownership that are frequently overlooked. Are you sure home ownership is for you? Are you sure that you have the financial stability to take this on? And obviously, if it's something that they feel that they can do, then we're going to work with them. If it's something they feel that they can't do, we'll still work with you. We'll still give you tips and tricks and pointers. We partner with a lot of banks. So we are really big into financial literacy. Even if you're not looking to buy a house with us, it's good to know how to buy a house, period. We recommend the Metro Interfaith First-Time Homebuyers course. It's a really great class. They teach you all of the ins and outs in a much more in-depth manner. And so a lot of people, regardless of partnering with us, they will take that course just because it's filled with such valuable information. So we're looking for people who are mortgage ready. We're looking for people who are ready to partner because, like I said, we do the sweat equity. So some people don't realize that that is another component. And I think sometimes it can be off-putting because they see it as punitive, like, why do I need to build the house? But it's not. The sweat equity is not just for you in terms of putting your time and effort to match our volunteers. The sweat equity is for you to learn home maintenance, home upkeep. When you join the crew, you're going to learn literally the ins and outs, the skeletons of your home. You're going to learn, okay, if a breaker trips, this is where my breaker box is. This is how I fix it. Here's where my HVAC system is. So it's not just so you can say, oh yeah, I built that. It's to say, oh yeah, I built that, and if something breaks or if there's an accident, I know how to fix it. And I am a strong proponent of education of all forms because knowledge is transferable. And so for us, especially when we're dealing with first-time home buyers, that's their first time. And so, like you were saying with the grandmother and the daughter and how important it was for her daughter to have a home, that's how I feel. But then the seed that was planted in her daughter having a home is then planted into her children and then her children's children. And we begin this generation of knowledge and home ownership that wasn't previously established. And now we've put good into society. So that's one of the things that I always try to remind people of, is that it's benefiting everyone. You and us, and it's good for society. I mean, it's people having a safe place to sleep, an affordable place to sleep. It makes a world of a difference. in terms of children and being able to feel safe and be able to perform well in school, parents being able to afford the place that they're staying in and not have to choose between medicine and food and
Right.
shelter.
That's an important thing, and breaking that. Sometimes it's a cycle of poverty that a person has
Yes.
been involved in, where poverty has been passed on from generation to generation, and what you're establishing through Habitat is the idea that generational wealth can be passed on too.
Yes.
And that's harder than it sounds, right? Yeah, I make it sound really easy when I say that, right? Yeah, but how hard is it to kind of get through to people that they're and empower them to really be involved in that process?
I mean, I think the people who are really passionate about home ownership, who are really determined, it doesn't take much, cajoling. They're fired up, they're ready. Our current homeowner, the one who's, attached to her home, I met with her before she ever started any sweat equity, and I just said, just tell me what this means for you. I know how I feel about owning a home. What does this mean to you? Tell me your story. What does this mean to your children? And, she went on to say how this was always something she dreamt of, having a home and being able to have, rooms for her children, that they're separate, and, being able to feel safe and comfortable, but she never thought it would happen.
Right.
And so when I asked her, well, how did you hear about Habitat? And she said, well, someone in a Facebook group I'm in had mentioned that Habitat was building a home, so I figured I'd reach out. And she's like, and even still, I really didn't think that it would be a possibility for me. I wasn't sure based on my income. I wasn't sure if I was going to be mortgage ready. But she came in, she met with Michelle and I, and we walked her through the process, and she was just so excited, and she's still excited, because she knows what she's putting into the home, and she knows what she's going to get out of it, and I know what that means to her. And so for me, I will say hands down, that is the most rewarding part of my job, the homeowners and, finding out their individual stories, because everyone is unique.
Right.
They're all first-time home buyers, but they all have a different story to how they got to this point. And so for me to learn about what this means to her, she's already set up the plans, what she wants to do, for her children, with her children, through the course of her mortgage and beyond. And I love that. I love to see that she's already planning, she's already seeing a future that she had always wanted and never thought she would get.
Right. How does it feel to hand those keys over?
I love that. I remember the very first time I handed the keys over. I had just started, and so the family I had only met a couple times because they had already been selected before I was in this position. But I had met with them, and it was a couple, and they were just the sweetest people, and they were so funny. And so I spent so much time laughing that I was like, I really need to focus. But at the same time, when I'm trying to get this house ready to close, right after I had started, we had a robbery at our job site.
Oh, no.
And the house that we were building at the time, thieves came, broke down the door, stole all of our tools, and it was a headache of epic proportions. And it literally happened like 2 days after I started.
I still can't believe people do that.
Yeah, that one hurt.
Oh, man.
Because it was clear it was a Habitat house. We have massive signage and everything, but. Anyhow, I remember talking to the crew, and I said, do you guys want to take a break, take a beat? I understand this is a big ordeal. And they were like, nope, we've got work to do. We've still got, hand tools. They took our power tools, but we're going to keep going. And I was really heartened by that. But at the same time, I called my board president, and I'm like, what have you talked me into? Because I'm like, there's a robbery going on. I've inherited all this paperwork. I don't know how to do it. And you said I was going to be good at this. And he's like, oh, yeah, don't worry, you'll figure it out. And he was so confident. And I was so just overwhelmed, and I was so
Right,
mad
right,
at
right.
him. And so I told him, I have this joke that we have, that he definitely baited and switched me. But then about 2 months later, I was standing in front of the house, turning over the keys to this family, and we had just had our closing ceremony. And for those who don't know what our closing ceremony is, it's at the end of the build before the ink is dry, so to speak. We have like a little party to celebrate the homeowner, you know, however they want to do it, I'm happy with it. You know, if they want fanfare, we'll have fanfare. If they want something more quiet, we'll have something more quiet. But we just want to celebrate because this is a really celebratory moment.
So housewarming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for them, they just wanted a really quiet, intimate thing. So we had a small picnic, and it was beautiful. And I just remember giving them the keys, and the wife looks over to her husband and she says, "This is our home now."
Oh, man.
And I remember I went home, and at that point it was like 9 o'clock at night, but I texted my board president and I said, "Thank you.
This is why.
You may have baited and switched me, but this one moment has made it all worth it."
Yeah.
And if I get to see this again and again, it will keep me in the thick of all of the craziness that does happen, all of the administrative paperwork. You know, to watch someone, you know, open the door to their first home for the first time, you can't top that.
Now, Habitat for Humanity is a faith-based organization.
Yes.
So in our last minute, what would you say is the reason that church people ought to be involved with Habitat?
Well, we always say we're looking to put God's love into action. Jesus commanded us to love our neighbors. I can't see a better way to love your neighbor than to help your neighbor get a safe and affordable place to live.
Well, that's pretty short and concise. Yeah, you've got it down pretty well. And really, I mean, the idea is that, you know, that you are helping your neighbor, and you know what your neighbor's struggle is. Many of us know. I mean, I'm a homeowner, and I know that it didn't come naturally,
Right.
you know, to me even. It was something that I had to learn over a course of time. But it's important work that Habitat's involved in. Yeah, so what is your phone number? How can people get in touch with you?
The phone number for the office is 607-239-4783.
And do you have a website?
We do. www.broomehabitat.org.
And if a person's interested, they should get in touch with Michelle. I believe that's who you said it was? Is
Yes,
that correct?
Michelle Clark. I mean, feel free to call the office and you can still talk to me, but Michelle is our family selection and she's really good at that. She's so good.
And that's an important thing for people to know. And if they want to volunteer, who should they contact in order to do that?
Contact me, but you can also just do the volunteer process online. It's a very short, sweet application, and you sign a waiver, and then you'll get a response from someone in the office, one of our office volunteers, saying, take the safety course, and once you take the safety course, it's about 20 minutes, then you're welcome to come and volunteer.
And your phone number one more time.
607-239-4783.
So Lateisha, it's been awesome having you on having you on Encounter, and for us being able to talk about Habitat for